I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support. Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha, wherever you're at around the world. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. As you've noticed, no tie, still wearing a hoodie. Why? It's the holidays. We're not really working. We're half working today. We're doing a replay of the top 10 moments/interviews of the Unidentified Celebrity Review in the year 2021. Before we get started with today's show, got to pay some bills. Want to make sure that you guys know the tunes that are provided on the show are all provided by DOS Tapes. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. Go check them out. They've got a new album dropping. I know I've been saying this for months, but Kevin is a perfectionist, and that album's not going to drop until it's 100% perfect. So, but it will be dropping. So go sub to him, because we're going to be having some new tunes here very, very soon. Also, want to remind you that the show is available on both Spotify and iTunes as soon as the show is done airing. It should pop up there. Please leave us a rate and review. It goes a very, very long way into making sure that more people find our podcast, and it's working. The podcast had over 10,000 downloads this month, which is the most we've had by a lot. I mean, just last month we had, I think, 7,500 downloads. This month we're already at over 10K. So it's insane, and that's all to you guys. So I appreciate you guys sharing the show, commenting, and liking it. We truly appreciate it. Also, other ways to support, consider joining our Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That's right. For as little as $1, you can help support this show and make sure that we provide it to you at least 4 days a week here, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, right? Yeah, that makes sense. And don't worry about it if you guys can't support your Patreon or Super Chats, which are open. You can support the show just by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Nothing here is hidden behind a paywall. There's no paywalls here at UCR, so as soon as the show is live, it's available to everyone as soon as it's over. So I hope you appreciate that. I know we appreciate you guys that help and support in the Patreon. You guys are absolutely amazing. Also want to say thank you to our moderators, Tina Tomaszewski, Aaron Desario, Rodrigo, UFOT, whoever's in the chat today. Thank you so much for helping moderate. I truly appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the description below, where you can find links to the UCR merch store. You can find links to everyone who you see speak on the channel. Today's panel is going to have Robert Salas, Lue Elizondo, Ross Coulthart, and who else do we have in there? I'm forgetting somebody. Oh yes, Richard Hoffman from the SCU. It was an amazing panel. It's an hour and a half long. It's probably got one of the most awkward moments in the UCR history. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let you guys listen and watch and find out. It was a pretty fun moment. I'm still waiting to get Robert Salas back on the show. He deserves his own 2-hour show, clearly. So we're going to make that happen in the next year, in this new year coming up. And yeah, last but not least, want to say thank you to the KGRADB.com family, where you can find all of our shows streaming on there for free. And you can also check us out every Friday, where we stream live on Fridays from 1 to 3 Pacific Standard Time. So with all of that out of the way, I truly appreciate you guys being here. It's an absolute pleasure. We've got a really, really cool episode today. Before we get to that, I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. Buck Wyeld? What is this? The Rather Be Squidding Hour? Unfortunately not. Rather's off this week. Earned some earned time off of the entire UCR fam. Live streaming at 7. Yeah, we always live stream at 7 p.m. Eastern. We live stream 4 p.m. Pacific every day except for Fridays when we go 1 to 3 o'clock Pacific. So that would be 4 to 6 Eastern. So, yes, Jay Flieger, thank you so much for being here. Ryan Sprague, let's go! What's up, brother? So happy you're here. Always a pleasure to see your face in the chat. Night Gazer, woohoo! This one is a classic. This episode is an absolute classic. Case for Infinity, EXO, all love me on the East Coast. Thank you, Case for Infinity. Always a pleasure to have you here. Night Gazer, Surly Salas. That's a good nickname for him. Hola, Case for Infinity says Night Gazer. Hola, Ryan Sprague says Night Gazer. Hey, yo. Yes, this one made the clench for a second. This one made me clench for a second. Yeah, I think it made everyone clench this interview. It was... Oh, let me bring the microphone. There we go. It's probably better now. This interview made everyone clench. There's no doubt about that. Sun Saver from NHH. What up, Luis? Happy New Year, folks. Happy New Year to you, my friend. Sweet McLeod. Afternoon, fellow Dino Beavers. I mean humans. Afternoon to you, Sweet McLeod. Appreciate you being here. Aaron Desario, one of our moderators and producers on Tuesdays for Daniel Miller's show. Is the Robert Salas show? Is this the Robert Salas show? I heard it was. It is. This is indeed the Robert Salas show, even though he leaves early. I don't want to give too much away if you haven't seen it. It's pretty fun. Alien Bogaface, can you return a Dino Beaver back to Animal Shelter asking for a friend? I don't see why not. Just as long as you're within that time frame, that time allowance that they give you, whatever that is. Jesse James B was here on 7 on the dot, and 3 people beat me to the line already. That's all right. Don't sweat it. Sweat McLeod, Alien Bogaface, only if they had their shots, as in your Dino Beaver needs to have your shots. Hello, Eventide. Hello, Jason Fay. Hello, Stefan Bodin. Sweet McLeod saying, hey, Case for Infinity, the audio in this was better than the Salas hearing. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. Gabriel, cheers from Panama. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Hey, Gabriel. Hello from Panama, my friend. Thank you for being here. Sun Saver, I want to hear right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. No tie today. We are on complete chill mode. I went and played some golf today. It rained a little bit, so I almost took a nap right before the show. Michelle's taking a nap right now. She's super tired. She just has a huge headache, so I almost took a full nap with her, and thankfully I woke up because I had the show. MP in the house, thank you so much for being here, Nick. $30 donation. Was just watching Don't Look Up and got so mad. Support UAP research, y'all. That movie is awesome. I highly recommend everybody go watch. If you got Netflix, go check it out. Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence. It's got a star-studded cast. It's a great flick. And the asteroid is just a great substitute for global warming, for UAP research, for COVID, for whatever's actually happening in the world. And the asteroid is what they're trying to bring attention to. And it's a scary depiction of how our media and how the world reacts to heavy news. And so I enjoyed the hell out of it. As a matter of fact, I had a nightmare the night I watched it that we were going to get hit by an asteroid. So yeah, go check it out. It's an awesome flick. Probably my favorite movie that I've seen this holiday season. I watched Spider-Man 2 twice already. Good. Go check it out. Definitely worthy of a watch. And I watched The Matrix. Not as good. Yeah, that's where I'll leave it. Maybe we'll talk about that in another show. But thank you for being here. Oh, Rather, what's up, dude? In the house. What a fun or stressful one this was. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here, Rather. Truly appreciate it, my brother. There's our Patreon link if you guys want to go check that out. Clean Christmas camera quality, Lou. If you've noticed that the camera's gotten a little nicer and higher quality, it's because it has. Michelle got me a brand new camera. As a matter of fact, it's the same camera that Michael Mataluni uses, and I think Rather Be Squidding uses the same camera now too. So now we've all matched up on cameras. So I am no longer the one who's got the crappiest camera. So yeah, thank you for noticing. I'm sure will be excited to hear that. Alien Boca Face Ross Coulthart, my favorite Canadian journalist. God, there's so many things wrong with that. I can't even begin to say. Jason Fay, what is this? The Luis Jimenez show? Indeed, it is. Trying to be anyway. Chad Smith. Guys, if you don't know who Chad Smith is, go check out his channel. He just started a channel. It's really great. He was actually, I think it's safe to say, my first fan, other than like mom or girlfriend. Chad Smith was the first guy commenting and liking and sharing my videos. Chad, thank you so much for being here, man. What is up, my dude? Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I'm so happy you're here. Celebrating the bill signing with the Gillibrand Amendment from Fleegler. Jay Fleegler, thank you so much. We're going to get to that right now. Yeah, it was a big day. My mic's not in the other room. I just switched it. Sorry. I hope you guys should be hearing a good mic by now, right? Let me see, make sure my audio is right. It is. Okay, cool. I just had it far away from me. But yes, because it essentially was in another room. So thank you for noticing, Chad. I appreciate it. He says it's much better now. There you go. Jason Smith, what's going on? Stuart, hello. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. The Sparky Lady, hello, everyone. Let's see here. 8-Bit Christmas was good. I've been seeing that on my feed. I guess you're saying I should watch it. All right. That 4K StreamYard upgrade finally taken full advantage of. Indeed I am, Indeed I am. It finally, the camera matches the account. So that's good. That's a good thing. Konnichiwa, everyone. Single White Samurai. Konnichiwa. Thank you for being here. Are you in Japan? That'd be cool if you were. If you're watching from Japan, that would be sick. If you're not, don't worry about it. It's still cool. I got a pork roast on, onions, parsley, French tarragon, white wine, bacon, carrots, chicken broth, etc., vodka, and cranberry for dessert. Damn. Sunsaver's doing it right. All right, you guys. So let's get into it. I'm going to go over a little bit of news and then one video that piqued my interest that I just wanted to share with you guys, talk about real quick. But yeah, so the big news is that Joe Biden has signed the NDAA. UAP office is now law. It's a law now. We're going to have an office in 180 days, a brand new UAP office. They still haven't come up with a name for it. I'm dying to know what the name for it is, but what I'm really dying to know is what the budget of this new office is going to be. So 180 days from now should be in June. I'm thinking it's somewhere around June 17th or 18th, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'll make a countdown so we can always reference a countdown. I had one for the last report that was due. I had a countdown, so that was really easy. So you guys could keep a track and days as to when this office is supposed to be established. I'm going to assume that in January, we're going to start getting some answers on the budget. We're going to start getting answers on who's going to be heading this office, where this office will be physically. Will it be in the Pentagon? Will it be in another state? There's a lot of things that need to be determined from this office, but that's it. We're done with the UAP office. It is official. Nail in the coffin. It's done. We're getting the UAP office. We're getting all the verbiage that we had in D.D. Johnson's overview of the bill, I believe, on December 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. So everything that was in there on December 3rd is in the NDAA that is now signed into law. So very exciting day. I mean, we knew this was going to happen. We kind of, once the NDAA is settled on it, I've never seen a president not sign it. So, but it's still something to celebrate, still something to be incredibly proud of, how far this community and this discussion has come since 2017 and just in 2021 alone. Here we were in April asking for congressional hearings, asking for an extension to the June report with a preliminary report. We ended up getting the main report with no preliminary report. We wanted we were told that, hey, we got to establish a new office. We've got to establish with our local and state representatives that this is something that should be looked at, that should be taken seriously. So we did another big phone home to ask for congressional hearings and make our representatives aware that the UAP topic is not going away. We're not going to rest on our laurels, and we're here because we want some answers. And I think this next clip that I'm going to show you guys is going to be a really, really good indication as to what is coming. This clip that I'm going to show you guys is from Meet the Press on CBS on Sunday mornings. This is a very, very subdued, serious political magazine program that tackles the entire political week in, I believe it's an hour or 2 hours every Sunday on CBS. This is a show that elitists watch. Let's elitists and baby boomers, essentially. Lawmakers, decision makers watch this show. It's normally hosted by George Stephanopoulos, who was the political strategist for Bill Clinton and helped Bill Clinton get into the White House, and among a bunch of other things. But the point is that this is not a news segment or show that goes into sensational stuff. And what this correspondent says on it is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I hope he's right. I think he's setting the expectation bar a little too high, but let's play it and see what you guys think. Let's see here. Let's bring it up.
The tough one of whether Putin will invade.
So this is David Martin, and they ask him, basically the question is, do you know if Putin is going to invade Ukraine? Which he gives the answer right off the top of the bat, which I thought was an interesting answer. And then he pivots sharp on two things that he hopes to get an answer on this year. The first is Havana syndrome, and the second is UAPs. So let's listen to what he's got to say, because it's incredibly, incredibly fascinating. At least I think it is.
Duck the tough one of whether Putin will invade Ukraine or not. If he hadn't made up his mind, I shouldn't have to make up mine. So, there are two mysteries out there. What's causing Havana syndrome? These debilitating symptoms that hit Americans overseas that seem to be the subject of some kind of directed energy attack. And where are these unexplained aerial phenomena we call UFOs? These drone-like objects that show up in the middle of U.S. military exercises. Where the heck are they coming from? So I'm predicting one of those two will be solved in 2022.
That's pretty amazing. And Aaron Desario points out, you're all over the map on shows. George is on ABC, Meet the Press is on NBC, CBS has This Morning. You're right. You're absolutely right. Every network has a version of this show on Sunday morning. And I think it started with Meet the Press. And then now CBS has This Morning. You're absolutely right. This is George Stephanopoulos is not on this show, but it's that vein of show. So I apologize. Thank you for the correction, Aaron. But yeah, I'm all over the place. Buck Wild says, I'll unsub if Luis doesn't do a makeup tutorial with his new camera. I love it. That's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, this is like kind of what Night Gazer says here. Not Night Gazer, Sunsaver says, wow, that's a bold prediction. So two things. This is Face the Nation. You're right. The other one's Meet the Press. Thank you, Stuart. CBS is Face the Nation. ABC is Meet the Press. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is an incredible statement from this gentleman. I kind of want to listen to it one more time. He talks about Havana syndrome, and man, I know we've been talking about Havana syndrome a lot this year, but for some reason, when I listened to this, it really hit me as an actual phenomena that people are I know I've heard about it, about dignitaries inside U.S. consulates describing these effects. But holy cow, if there's a foreign nation with a energy directed weapon that is targeting U.S. diplomatic institutions. Who's doing that? Where's that coming from? That's a huge question. Almost as huge as the where these UAP coming from. I mean, both of those are some insane revelations, insane statements to make. So let's listen to him one more time. Again, David Martin. He's a contributor to Face the Nation on CBS, and they're sort of going over predictions for the next year.
There are two mysteries out there. What's causing Havana syndrome, these debilitating symptoms that hit Americans overseas that seem to be the subject of some kind of directed energy attack? And where are these unexplained aerial phenomena we call UFOs, these drone-like objects that show up in the middle of U.S. military exercises? Where the heck are they coming from? So I'm predicting one of those two will be solved in 2022.
Ooh, that's a bold prediction. If I had to take a guess, I think Havana syndrome comes in first. I think if we get an answer to either one of these, it will be Havana syndrome. It will not be the UAP topic. I mean, but he's curious. Straight quote, where the heck do they come from? He's legitimately thought about this, and this is something that he wanted to talk about in this segment because they had that video clip ready to go of the gimbal footage. He must have read the NDAA clearly. I mean, he knows about this new task, this new office that's going to be set up here in 180 days. I hope the media puts this kind of pressure on this office and on the Pentagon to start answering these questions because they're legitimate questions that need legitimate answers. And now it's law. They have to start giving us at least some of these answers that don't fall within the purview of national security. And I think that's really going to be the first year of this office is going to be determining what data will be available to do congressional and senatorial briefings, classified briefings, and then what data will be filtered through that to the public. I think that's what this first year is really going to be about, establishing, okay, what's going to be the rules on releasing data, on releasing reports, how far can we go with this data, and what's appropriate versus what's not, what puts people in danger versus what doesn't. These are going to be legitimate things that they're going to have growing pains on. We got to give the office a little bit of patience, a little bit of breathing room. Let them establish their footing within this topic, and then in the second year, really start holding some feet to the fire. Not that we can't do that in year one. I'm just saying we should manage our expectations and what this office is going to accomplish next year. Really, really manage your expectations. But at the same time, be vigilant, be on top of it. If there's something that we see wrong, let your congressman and senator know about it. I'm sure I'll be saying something. But let's just cross that bridge when we get there, I guess is the whole point of it. Just be patient, give them time, and let's see what happens. This is uncharted waters for the United States government. I mean, there's never been legislation like this. And the closest thing that's ever come even remotely close, and it's not even the same ballpark, let alone the same game, is Project Blue Book. And that was 60 years ago. Nobody that's in our government now was part of Project Blue Book. Nobody is like a descendant of that program that's running into this new program. So, patience is key, managing expectations, but we'll keep on top of the news. We'll fill you in on all the developments as we get them, and we'll talk about them with you guys and see what the proper course of action is. But it's going to be a fun year. I cannot wait for 2022. I know Lue Elizondo is excited. I know John Greenwald's excited. Stephen Greenstreet's excited, even though they sometimes don't seem like they are. They are. This is going to be fun times for everyone. I really, really believe it. But yeah, so that's sort of the news. That's what happened over the weekend a little bit. I'm not gonna. Oh, and we had the James Webb Telescope. James Webb Telescope. Totally forgot to mention that. James Webb Telescope launched on Christmas Eve. It seems like the launch went very, very well. I know that there's still a lot of steps and processes, or a process that the satellite has to go through, including aligning the mirrors, which I've heard the mirrors can't be less. It's like less the margin for error is less than the width of a hair follicle. So if one of those things is off by that much, the whole telescope just doesn't work. And it's also too far away to send astronauts to go just fix it like they did with Hubble. So this thing has got to work as soon as it's out there and established. And once they've run all the diagnostics and they make sure everything is working, it's got to all work. Not one piece can fail. And so that's where everybody's getting a little nervous. I think it's going to be a gangbusters success. I've got some high hopes for James Webb. I can't wait to see what we start hearing from it, or seeing from that telescope in the next 3 to 6 months, to see what kind of images it produces, what we can see, and if the telescope lives up to the hype. We'll wait and see and see what happens. I haven't heard that it's descending. I could be wrong. That could be new news, but I'm not sure. Dry Toast with a $5 donation. Thank you so much, you guys, for these super chats. Truly appreciate it. All right, so let's get this show on the road, shall we? So we've got our interview from the Big Phone Home, day 3. This is the Big Phone Home 2. I've got the link for this entire discussion in the description below. So if you don't have time to watch the replay here, or you just want to go catch it on your own time, the link is in the description. So please go check it out. I'm kind of shocked that I think we got somewhere around 14,000 views on this video. I'm a little shocked that it hasn't blown up even more, just for this interview alone. this interview alone is amazing. I mean, Richard Hoffman, Ross Coulthart, Lue Elizondo, and Robert Salas. It's a really cool panel. It does get a little contentious. It gets a little awkward, which I think is fun. And I thought we dealt with it in a really great way, but you guys be the judge of that. But I mean, yeah, this is hands down one of the funniest moments I've ever, and funniest / awkward moments that I had to deal with in real time. So it was fun. So enjoy. I'm going to start playing this now. And by the way, the link for this video, for this panel, the link below also has the timestamp, so it'll take you directly to the beginning of this interview. So enjoy, you guys. I'll be back in a little bit. If you have any questions, I'll be in the chat. Don't hesitate. Enjoy Robert Salas, Ross Coulthart, and Richard Hoffman on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, the Big Phone Home, day 3. Enjoy, you guys. This was a good one. All right, gentlemen. So let's do it. We're 5 minutes late on this next panel. If you can, Michael, introduce our next guests, and I'm gonna try and find. We're missing one panelist, and that is Robert Salas. So I'm going to go and try to find him while you introduce everyone. And by the way, and rather, the first question for this panel, right? By the way, sure we're going to get commercials. I got to upgrade to YouTube Red so the commercials don't come. But if the commercials come, give it a second and I'll skip it. But yeah, I mean, usually the more popular videos, the commercials are a little more frequent. So be patient with that. I'll skip them as soon as I can. And Brett Hornick, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. You are a gem, sir. Truly appreciate it. You guys are amazing. Watch out. Everybody's like, watch out for the commercials, Lou. I love it. All right, you guys, enjoy. I'll be back a little bit. All right, my man. Thank you.
All right, well, let's get it rocking. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who were on the Big Phone Home yesterday, you've already met this man. Rich Hoffman has a BA in Organizational Communications from Wright University. He has information technology consultant, strategist. He's also worked as a defense contractor for 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, the man behind the SCU. Thank you so much for joining us again today, Rich Hoffman. You're too kind, my friend.
Oh, it's glad to be here. You guys are just awesome. I mean, this is a great event. We need to do more of this, actually.
Oh, trust me, we will.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. The next guest that we have coming on is a multi-award-winning investigative journalist with 3 decades of experience in newspaper and television, including reporting for the Sydney Morning Herald newspaper, ABC TV, Four Corners, Nine Network Sunday program. He's won an extraordinary amount of awards for being an exquisite journalist. Ladies and gentlemen, Ross Coulthart. Ross, how are you?
Oh,
You guys got to bring him on. I'm sending emails here.
Howdy, how are you all?
Fantastic, Ross. It's great to have you. Really appreciate your time. And what is it, like 9 in the morning over there? So
No, it's 6:30 in the morning. Let me just full disclosure. I messed up Ross Coulthart's timing because I could have sworn that the last time he was on was 9 a.m. for him, and it wasn't. It was 9 a.m. when we had him on, but today it's actually 6:30. So I thank you. I'm sorry for the snafu on scheduling, but I'm so happy you're here. I can see it on your face. Oh my God, it's so early. Thank you.
You're very lucky. I'm an early riser. It's not a problem at all.
I appreciate it, Ross. And I think this is going to be worthy because the next man we're bringing on, you guys are just hearty friends. So please, Michael, introduce the man, the myth, the legend.
Absolutely. The former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, the secretive Pentagon unit that studied UFOs. We know him, we love him. Lue Elizondo. Welcome, Lue.
Oh, thanks, guys. It's great to be here again. And Ross and Rich, it's always a pleasure to see you guys. I feel a bit outgunned because every single person on this right now has these incredibly, beautiful Hollywood style type faces. And then there's me.
Oh,
you can't beat that. A little bit lower now.
I'm gonna go ahead and say there's nothing Hollywood about this face right here. Look at this guy. Look at this guy.
I'm wondering if you're real or not. If you're some sort of high functioning AI, because every time I turn it, you're just awake. You're constantly awake, and you're doing this like a machine. Day in and day out, just go. Do you ever? Are you even real? Do you ever sleep?
Yeah, rather. Are you real? Do you sleep?
Yeah, that answer might be classified, Lou. I don't know if I can answer that.
We might have to. You might have to ask our friend Hal Puthoff.
We'll talk after this.
You're not willing to break NDA, rather. Is that correct?
Yeah. I made him sign it. The UCR has an NDA. He's not allowed to break
it. Thanks to everyone for coming here. I wanted to start Lou actually reminded me of this. We'd like to start this discussion off. Ross, we talked a couple weeks ago, and you left us with just kind of an amazing little tidbit. I think the exact quote that you gave us was, "I don't think that the ET hypothesis works, by the way. I don't think that it's ET, but that's a story for another day." Is this that other day?
Today's another day.
I think we should be looking more at something closer to home. I think the evidence, and I'd love Lou's response on this and Rich's, but the evidence suggests increasingly that what we're talking about is something that might have been here for a very long time. I'm fascinated, if you look back through human history, there's been in mythology, popular culture, in the Dreamtime stories of the Aborigines here in Australia, if you look at the rock art all around the world, there's been a presence on planet Earth that's never been explained. And we've turned a blind eye to it, but it's been there all the time. And I'm fascinated, for example, that the incidents that I've been recording from now numerous witnesses off the northwest coast of Australia suggest that there are objects that are going apparently intelligently controlled into the ocean off the northwest coast of Australia. And there are other places all around the world where this is happening. And I just question, is this something that's perhaps, what's the word, intra-terrestrial?
Interesting. Yeah, Lou, what do you think? I mean, he wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, that's certainly one of the possibilities, isn't it? I mean, we're constantly learning more and more about our planet. We're discovering new species almost every day, and it appears that every time we try to define what life is and put in a nice, neat little box, Mother Nature, she seems to always defy our definition. I think Ross is right. There is a lot of anecdotal information suggesting that we've been dealing with this phenomenon for a very long time. And if that is certainly turns out to be the case, then, we've got a lot of I hate to say the word soul searching, but we do have a lot of soul searching to do because it's been right in front of us the entire time. And maybe there's been points in time where our species had maybe had a better understanding of maybe what these were. Yeah, I don't disagree with Ross at all. I think as I've said before, all options have to be on the table and stay on the table until they're no longer on the table.
Yeah, I guess, that kind of brings up a point. If these are things that have been with us for millennia and a part of our history, what does that mean in the current context? Does that mean that, these aren't really a threat and there's nothing new, and that, or is it, something new or new developments that are happening now that are a reason for the increased sightings?
Who's that addressed to?
Sure, Lou, let's hear your thoughts if you would.
Okay, well, I've used this analogy before, and I'm going to say it again because I think it's probably, from my perspective, anyways, it makes sense. Let's just for a moment suspend where the source of these things are from, and let's just say that let's say you go to the local zoo, and you go to the local zoo to visit the gorilla, the great ape exhibit. And week after week, you go to the gorilla exhibit, and the silverbacks are sitting down eating their bananas and pruning each other, and they look really cute. One day, you go to the zoo, and it appears that a key has fallen from the zookeeper's ring on their belt, and one of the gorillas is looking at it and kind of putting it in his mouth and feeling it. Well, the next week you go back to the same zoo and back to the same exhibit, and that same gorilla now is sitting a little bit closer to the enclosure gate, and he's got the key and he's beginning to play with the key. Now, the monkey hasn't yet figured out how to get out of the cage, but it's a matter of time before that gorilla does. And the day you go to the zoo and that gorilla is no longer in the enclosure, you better hold on to little Johnny's hand, because now you've got an 800-pound gorilla on the loose, and that cute little gorilla, can all of a sudden turn violent. And so maybe we are dealing with something very similar. Perhaps we are the monkey. Maybe we are the species that has been relegated to its cage for millennia, and we're now at the point, technologically speaking, where we're beginning to discover ourselves and discover technology that allows us to get out of the cage. So after years and years of observing us, now this relatively violent species called the human race is about to have free reign over the entire zoo. Now that's a problem, right? Because we're not necessarily a peaceful species. What happens when that monkey now learns how to get out of its cage and shows up on your front lawn with a 12-gauge shotgun, right? That's a problem. So anyways, it's just one analogy that may help resonate how I feel. It's possible that we are the silverback, and we're being monitored and observed to see our technological advancements, and how we progress, and are we ready to be good neighbors or not.
What do you think that means for humanity's development as a species? I mean, obviously, there are many of us who believe that it will be the innovations in technology that will save us from ourselves when it comes to global warming, when it comes to what we've done to the planet. Obviously, we're not really turning around. We're continuing to innovate and develop. How do we develop internally so that we can handle the technology that may save us, but also could be technology that could destroy us or threaten other species, whether it's intraterrestrial as or ultra-terrestrial, as Roth says, or extraterrestrial or interdimensional?
Well, Mike, therein lies a problem, right? Technology is only as good as its developers, and almost every technology can be used dual purpose, for good or for bad, right? You can power the city with the atom. You can also destroy a city with that same atom. And that's true for almost every technology out there. You can look at the internet, right? The internet's great if you want to go shopping on it, let's say eBay or Etsy, but it can be very, very destructive for criminal activity, right? It can destroy people's lives, and people can get into addictions like gambling over the internet. So, as good as technology is for humanity, we must always remember that technology is basically a reflection of humanity itself, and depending on how we use that technology is usually a reflection of mankind and where we are. at that time of development. So I'd leave you with that.
So basically, we're 16-year-olds, and we've got the keys to the Ferrari, and we're a danger, and we need to grow up.
I'd say we're probably 9-year-olds. 16-year-olds is being a little bit, I think, generous. At least a 16-year-old, has to take a driver's license and learn how to drive at least an automobile. Probably not a Ferrari, but at least probably had some sort of driver's education. Whereas the 9-year-old has absolutely no idea what to do behind the wheel.
Real quick, I just wanted to say I found Robert Salas. He's here. Robert, how are you, sir?
Hello. Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, we hear you great. I think you might have the show playing on your computer, so we're getting a little bit of an echo. Oh, we hear you great. I think you might have that's exactly what's happening.
If you've got another browser window.
Okay, I guess I should try to take care of that. Take that other show off.
Yeah, exactly.
And as you do that, Robert, I just wanted to introduce everybody to you. You are a U.S. Air Force veteran you were in the force from 1960 to 71, received an honorable discharge. You earned your bachelor's degree from the U.S. Air Force Academy and graduate degrees from the Air Force Institute of Technology and the University of Washington. Thank you so much for joining us today, Robert. We really appreciate your time.
Okay, is that any better?
Yeah, sound. Look,
yeah,
I think so. Can you hear us, Bob?
Yeah, I'm going to turn my volume up.
There you go. Hello.
All right.
Okay, much better.
Oh, there we go. All right. Well, we basically just introduced and told everybody who you were, Bob. So I wanted, before we bring Bob in, because I definitely want to have a discussion about the nuclear aspect of this phenomenon. And I think Bob is the perfect guy to talk to about it with. But Rich Hoffman, I wanted to get your thought on what Ross was saying right off the bat, this idea that these things are closer than we might think, and maybe we should start looking a little closer as opposed to light years away. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, I would say that I think that we're also looking at trying to say that there's one origin when there might be many, and I just want to throw that out. I mean, when you say that you're talking about something that comes out of the ocean, and you look at I've been investigating cases for 57 years. They come in every shape and every size, so there must be one hell of a production site down underneath the ocean to be able to create different models like the Ferrari and the Volkswagen models we see. We're seeing all different shapes, sizes of objects over a long period of time. Now, the one thing that's pretty interesting about them is that it doesn't seem to matter what kind of shape that they have, but they can do the same kind of maneuvering. In other words, that they can make 90-degree turns and they can be a box shape, or that they can be a dumbbell shape, or that they can be any kind of shape. And so you get that kind of thing going on. Plus, you have all the things I talked with you yesterday about the fact that humans tend to want to put things in patterns and groups and everything else. And so it's really a soup that we call it a soup. That's the UFO. But there's a whole bunch of things in this soup, and we don't necessarily understand all the things in the soup either. There's some things we can explain, because some of the things we see in that soup, the carrot might be something like, a natural phenomenon that we know about. The other kind of soup ingredient might be the things that the Russians are doing, or the things that the Chinese are doing. And we just, can't discern what the heck that is yet. And so people are seeing all different kinds of things. And for us to sit back and just say that it's one explanation, it's a little bit tough. Now, I will say this much. If you look at the total history or all the records, there seems to be an indication that water is something that's important to them, as well as nuclear. So there's two things there that we seemingly see on a repeated basis that they use. Now, for what purpose? I have no idea. I mean, but I struggle with the concept of the production plant that's down underneath the ocean that's creating so many different kinds of craft that pop up and have been doing that throughout our history.
So real quick, I just want to tell everybody who's donating to the Super Chats, thank you so very much. We're taking down these questions, and we're going to try and fire them away in the last half hour like we did with the last interview. So keep them coming. We're going to do our best to get those answered for you. But what I want to do is bring in Robert Salas, because there's a couple of things you're doing right now. first of all, if you can, in a quick summary, if you can, I know that there's a lot of nuance and perspective to your story, but if you could remind people who are in the audience who've never heard of Robert Salas and sort of the experience that he had. And then I'd also like to talk about sort of the initiative that you've taken up and what you're trying to do to get, your voice heard in Washington again.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you for doing this. I've told my story so many times. I'll just go over it very briefly.
Yes, please.
So in 1967, I was a missile launch officer at Malmstrom Air Force Base. I was, in March 24th of 1967, I was in command of Oscar Flight, which was about 100 miles east of Great Falls, Montana. When I got first a call from my topside guards, I had 6 guards upstairs. I was 60 feet underground. And he said there's strange lights in the sky flying very erratically. They were not airplanes, making no sounds, making 90-degree turns, stopping on a dime, reversing course. I kind of dismissed it. I didn't really believe in UFOs at the time, even though we were getting reports in the local newspapers about them. So I basically hung up on him. The next call was about a couple of minutes later. This time he was very, very excited, very frightened. He had all the guards out with his weapons drawn and with their weapons drawn. And he told me finally I got him calmed down enough. He said there was a orange-red light hovering above the site, pulsating. They wanted me to tell them what to do. At that point, I realized that we were under some sort of an attack. That's the way I took it at the time. And so I told him, just make sure nothing comes in the perimeter fence. And then he hung up. I went to tell my commander about this phone call, and just was about to tell him about it because he'd been taking a rest break. All the missiles started going down. We lost all 10 missiles. March 24th, 1967, after he reported to the command post, he turned to me and said the same thing happened at another flight. Now, I thought it was that evening. However, it turned out to be 8 days earlier, I later found out, and that was the Echo flight incident. So within the span of 8 days, UFOs reported over the missile sites. At the time, all 10 of their missile sites went down. All 10 of my missile sites went down. 20 missiles lost within the span of 8 days to UFOs. That's it in a nutshell.
That's a hell of a nutshell. I appreciate that. So if you can, just tell the folks what what is Robert Salas doing today to get this story in front of lawmakers?
Okay, what I've done is set up a press conference. It'll be held at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. on October 19th. So in another month or so, we will have at least 3 of us there at the press club, and one coming in on Zoom. All witnesses to UFO events at nuclear weapons bases, and so we will present our case to the press, to the national press. It will be live streamed. This will definitely happen, no question. We've got the funds now, thanks to crowdsource funding, which I am completely grateful for. But we've got the funds to do this. After the press conference, we will walk over to the Rayburn building, especially, and talk to congressmen, and then over to the Senate if we can arrange for any interviews with either congressmen or senators, and we'll go over our case in more detail. So that's our initiative that we will do.
And where can people find that crowdsourcing effort?
I can go to my GoFundMe page. If they have Facebook, they can go to my Facebook page and link to that sourcing. I can send you the links. Also, they can go to PayPal. I've got a source there at PayPal where they can send donations. We've almost got, I'm asking for 13,000 in order to cover all the costs, and we're almost there. But,
Awesome. Rather, did you have a question?
Well, yeah. I mean, your story is amazing, and it really kind of makes me think that maybe these, whatever they are, have some sort of interest in us, humanity. That kind of leads to Mr. Calhoun had a great question. Yes, in Ross's opinion, does the phenomenon have any long-term plans for humanity? Is it conducting deliberately any teaching, as Jack Fillet suggests? Be really curious to know your thoughts.
Well, I think I'll roll back in answering that. I'll roll back to the implicit question that was behind the last questions, which was, is there a threat? And I guess my response to that would be, if there was a threat from something that's so technologically advanced. I mean, we're talking here, as Lue has referred to many times, we're talking here about an advanced technology that is just off the grid, frankly, in terms of comparisons to what we have as technology. So if this thing, whatever it is, if this intelligence wanted to wipe us out, it could have done long ago. So in terms of lessons for humanity, look, I like the theme that comes through and what Rob's talked about, and I've read Robert Hastings' excellent book, UFOs and Nukes, and Bob Salas's accounts of what he's seen are just touching the iceberg of, just to my amazement as a journalist, I was amazed that from what Bob Hastings told me, there's been literally hundreds of these incidents across the United States, including also in facilities here in Australia, where intelligently controlled objects have engaged with facilities that are linked to nuclear weapons. We've got Pine Gap here in Australia, Northwest Cape, and it's very hard. Look, all we can do is make judgments, but it's very hard to escape the impression that what these objects are doing is taking a concerned look at a technology that, well, sadly, we've misused in the past and for offensive purposes to kill many, many hundreds of thousands of people. And I think the fear of any intelligent entity might be that we'd do that again.
Yeah,
I have a question for the panel, rather, if I may.
Yeah, please.
So I'm very curious, and it's a speculative question, and maybe we could just thought experiment here for a second, because I think it's valuable to do thought experiments. This way we can understand what sort of hypotheses we want to put on the table and what we can test for. My question is, when it comes to UFOs being attracted to nuclear sites, that seems to implicate either A, what Ross was saying earlier, is that they are ultra-terrestrial or some sort of something that's been here, because it would make a difference whether or not we misused atomic energy, or they're benevolent and interested in helping us keep ourselves from blowing ourselves up. Because, when you think about nuclear technology, every star in our galaxy, in the universe, is fusion technology. We see supernovas all the time. We know there is extraordinary explosions throughout our galaxy, but it doesn't seem like an extraterrestrial would want to stop that. So why would they be interested in this tiny blue dot in our tiny, nuclear capabilities, unless A, they were interested in helping us, or B, they were here and they were worried about themselves? Ross, Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to share a comment on that, because I think that, if you take a look at the history, like, to me, it's always been one of those things where, like, 1947, I mean, and even prior to that, we were doing all of these bomb tests in the ocean, right? We just got through saying that there might be a connection to the ocean or something of that nature, right? But you suddenly have these atolls that are, have nuclear devices that are being exploded, and then seemingly, out of nowhere, you've got all these objects that are now suddenly visiting Hanford and all these other kind of nuclear production sites and everything else. If you had, let's say, hypothetically, the ET was living underneath the ocean, well, wait a minute, we're blowing up things in the ocean. Let's come up and check out and see what we can do to stop that, right? You can look at that way. You could also say that, they're trying to do something where, if they've been here all along, They completely already know us. They know all of the languages on the planet. They can speak. They know where the cap point is because guess what? They're able to listen to communications and military, everything, and they've already figured out everything about us, right? They've tested this in every way, shape, or form. They've been at all of our installations. They continue to do that. They know about us completely. So my point to you would be that, with the context of, the nuclear thing, are they indeed trying to test us? Is this a surveillance kind of thing? Are they wanting to test us to see or send a message? You could say that. At the same time, if you take a look at it, they're popping in over in the Bentwaters area. They're certainly going around the world doing that. But then the Russians had the opposite experience where it suddenly activated their missiles. So wait a minute. Okay, which is it? And then we all want to say that the UFOs tend to be friendly. Then you look at the Colaris incident, and then you question, well, is it all friendly? And so there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. And one last point that I'm going to bring up is that I'm working in the DoD for the Army, and right now I'm engaged in installing drone killers, if you would, for all of our DoD facilities. And why are we doing that? Well, guess what? We've got drones that are hanging over military facilities that could be potentially the Chinese, the Russians, or somebody. And we can't figure out what they are. But we've got, now we're putting in tools to be able to combat it, to knock them out of the sky, find out if there's an operator, where the operator is. We've also got these drones that are popping and going in around Palo Verde, which is a nuclear plant. And so, we need to be concerned about this. And it is indeed a threat, because why would they be playing with us like this? And what are they wanting? What is their intent? And we don't know what their intent is.
Well,
we know go ahead.
Robert, I saw your hand go up. What was your thought on that?
Yeah, I wanted to make a couple of comments. One was ET or UFOs were seen over the Hanford site in 1944, and there were Navy pursuit aircraft set after them. This has been documented at least twice that I know of. So they knew about our plans to build nuclear weapons even before the first atom bomb test. And to follow up on the issue of their interest in our nuclear weapons worldwide, of course, we have had many instances of documented witness solid testimony of UFOs flying over bases in Europe that were part of the NATO alliance. The one in Italy, trying to think of the name. Anyway, Schorstenberg in the Netherlands in 1979, a very well documented incident. Many witnesses came forward, actually spoke on the radio the day after it happened. UFOs just flying to the weapons storage area, shining a beam of light. Aviano, Italy was what I was thinking of as another one. And then the Relisham case where nuclear weapons were stored at Bentwaters base, and UFO came over, shone a light on the weapons storage area. So there's no question that the UFOs want us to know that they are concerned about our nuclear weapons and our nuclear power plants. There have been many, many reports of UFOs over nuclear power facilities for a long, long time. So it is obvious that they are trying to send us a message, I think, that to get rid of these damn things, they are weapons of mass annihilation. They're not weapons of war. We would not use these in wartime, even though military generals going back to at least the Korean War have asked to use them of our presidents. So General MacArthur, General Westmoreland, both asked the government to use nuclear weapons. These are not weapons of war.
Well, I'll say this. He definitely made a friend of the show, Max Moskovich, very happy by mentioning the Sosterberg case, because he's been screaming at the top of his lungs about that. And I know it's a case that he lives in the Netherlands. It's probably one of the best cases out there when it comes to the nuclear connection. But Lou, I want to swing it over to you. In this preliminary report, I was at least expecting something about the nuclear connection to this phenomenon. Maybe we didn't get it because it is a preliminary report. Do you expect our security apparatuses to give us any sort of information, any more information on this connection, or is this something we're still a little far away from?
Well, let me give you my perspective. Our nuclear technology is considered the crown jewels for our nation, and frankly, most nations out there that have nuclear technology and nuclear weapons, it's considered some of the most sensitive technologies we have. In fact, there's an entire separate security classification for that type of related information from the Department of Energy. Let me just rattle off a couple names here, and then I'm going to tell you why they're relevant. Some of them you already heard about, but you heard about Oscar Site, Savannah River Facility, Oak Ridge, Hanford Site, Los Alamos, Bentwaters, Nimitz, Roosevelt. These are all nuclear capable technologies that we have U.S. government intelligence reporting that has now been released to the public through Freedom of Information Act that anybody can look at. And these incidents go back to the 1940s all the way to present day. These are the ones that anybody can see. Now, there are many, many, many more. And by the way, these are just the American ones, right?
Right.
There's a lot of others involving Russia and some other countries. So Mr. Salas is absolutely correct, as well as the other guests right now that you have on your panel, that there is definitely some sort of keen interest in our nuclear technology, whether it's nuclear weapons, nuclear propulsion, nuclear power, targeting and triggering and whatnot. I can't tell you how many pilots I've spoken to that used to fly nuclear capable, strike capable payloads, such as B-52 bombers that had a very specific mission. It wasn't all the B-52 bombers that would see UAPs, but there was a hell of a lot of them that were assigned to some of these nuclear strike capabilities, delivering nuclear payloads. And you know what? A lot of them saw UAPs. So there's a long history here. And I think the reason why, now you're asking the second part of that question, why didn't we see it in the report, the 180-day report, for several reasons. First of all, the staff was completely underfunded and outgunned, period. Anybody who was on the inside will tell you the same thing. You had a couple people working part-time on an impossible project.
You also warned us about this for months before. It was, I mean, there was no secret, but so I just wanted to just confirm that with you, like.
But let's get into the report, what it did say, okay? Because
I
think that's important. So Luis, you have a report that says there were in people look and say, oh, this is all the UAP reporting that we've had since Nimitz. No, it wasn't. The Nimitz was only one incident included, but really most of that reporting, of the 144 incidents, only one was actually able to be figured out. So that leaves 143. And out of those 143 incidents that were actually reported, most of them, 99%, came from the Navy, and only in the last year and a half. So 144 incidents reported predominantly by the Navy in only a year and a half is huge. And then you put that on the backdrop of the fact that in the report itself, it says most of the reports were not even reported. So if you do some simple mathematics here and say only 10% of the reports were actually reported of the incidents, that leaves 1,400 incidents, separate incidents that occurred involving just the Navy alone in only the last year and a half. Now, let's take a look at what the Navy has. Let's talk about the Roosevelt for a minute. Let's talk about the Nimitz and some of these super carriers. What are they? Well, it's a huge nuclear footprint. It's not just the aircraft carrier. It's a battle group, right? You have nuclear-powered vessels that are escorting that aircraft carrier. You have nuclear-powered submarines that are also part of that fleet. You have nuclear weapons in some of those submarines that are part of that fleet, right? That is, you have more nuclear presence in probably 10 square miles than you have on the entire eastern seaboard of the United States. So that's a huge nuclear footprint. There is absolutely a connection that we are convinced that exists. The reason why you saw in that 180-day report, I think some not a whole lot of information, is because frankly we're still trying to figure it out, and I think the government's being very cautious not to jump to any preconceived conclusions. But it's a scary notion when a country can't protect its own nuclear technology. You just heard Mr. Bob Salas saying that his entire flight was brought offline. And by the way, I know that to be true because I actually read the intelligence information reports about that incident. And by the way, other incidents. And oh, by the way, incidents involving other countries. And so it is real. And we can spend our time here debating whether or not, that the government's really interested in it, but they are, because the reporting's out there for anybody to read. And there's a lot more that hasn't been made public yet.
Well, I'd be remiss to not let the journalists in the room ask some questions. So, Ross, please, the floor is yours. Is there anything that is coming to the top of your head when you hear these things?
Well, look, I guess for me, it's whether we can expect any further disclosure from the UAP task force acknowledging that nuclear weapons do appear to be an area of interest from that perspective. I mean, I guess the big question I think I'm really struggling with at the moment is whether the preliminary report from the UAP task force reflects the entirety of where the US government wants to go, or whether can we interpret the fact that the UAP preliminary report only went from 2004 to the present day as an attempt to constrain the narrative to actually not talk about things that it doesn't want to talk about that have occurred in previous decades? That's very much my interest, is, why did they focus on 2004 when, I think, Lou, you spoke yesterday and the day before in this same event. You talked about the need to look at the history and the fact that the legislation that's coming up for the Congress is indeed going to be able to review previous cases, previous incidents going back to the 1940s. Is that happening, do you think, and do you think it will?
Well, I think it has to happen. And if you talk to representatives, whether it's Congressman Tim Burchett or Senator Marco Rubio or former Senator Harry Reid, all of them have expressed a desire to have this information provided, so much so that it's actually in writing in a bill right now for congressional approval, telling basically the legislative branch of our government, telling the executive branch, you will comply, otherwise you get no money. And so if you want to continue having a job, you better come correct. You better start reporting on this stuff that you haven't reported on before. And you better be more transparent. Now, I will tell you, it's my opinion, there are enclaves in the U.S. government that absolutely don't want to have this conversation. They're becoming increasingly more the minority within the U.S. government as far as a voice. But they're still pretty powerful. They're the same. I suspect the same people who are trying to quiet me and some of my colleagues. I don't think they're comfortable talking about this, because I think if we really go full open disclosure with this conversation, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to do some serious answering to the American public. And that, for me, is not conspiratorial. It's fact. You can look at any other type of event in the background. Look at the debacle right now that's happening in Afghanistan, right? Look at 9/11, look at COVID. Anytime you have someone in the government that's not being completely forthcoming on a situation, atonement is coming. The people want accountability. People deserve accountability, right? We pay them. We expect accountability. And yet here we are with people obfuscating. And I do think, Ross, that we are coming to a point where our elected officials are getting wise to some of the games that are being played. And frankly, I think they're losing some of their patience with it.
Cool. Robert, did you have something to say on that, or Richard?
Absolutely, I've got something to say.
We'll go to you next, Richard.
This cover-up that the government is doing has been going on since at least 1947, probably back to 42 during the Battle of LA. But so it's going to be very difficult to get this information out of the people that really know what's going on. I would like to be optimistic that that's going to happen anytime soon. But one of the reasons I've been doing this press conference is to push for open hearings. Once you get open hearings, you get witnesses like myself testifying. That's going to open that door much wider, the secrecy door. So I think that is the key, and that's what we all should be working for, open hearings. And that's why we'll be talking to Congress people, whoever I can talk to. I know it's you had somebody from a congressman from Tennessee.
Yep,
It's get a hold of. Yeah, I would like to get a hold of him and set up a meeting with the three of us that are going to be there, that are actual witnesses to these events. We've heard enough from talking heads about what their thoughts are about these things, but they ought to talk to actual witnesses, and maybe we can get some open hearings. So that's what I'm going to push for. I'm going to tirelessly try to contact these congressmen, senators, to see if we can get meetings.
Well, I'm happy you said that. Yeah, real quick. Yeah, please, Michael. What do you got?
Say,
Then we'll go to Richard.
Make a comment and ask a question, because that's what the Big Phone Home 2 is all about. We want public congressional hearings, and people have expressed to us how naive they believe we are in trying to push for congressional hearings. And I'd love to know from Lue. I mean, this is something that we believe, I'm not expecting, I don't think any of us are expecting the government to share classified, sensitive information with the American people. We just want the truth. And we believe that public hearings will bring us closer to solidifying this topic into the mind of the collective consciousness of the public. Are we on the right track with that? I know you mentioned, Lue, that maybe public hearings are a bad idea because perhaps we could be, putting people in awkward positions, but I'm just trying to figure out how else we're going to get there.
Sure. No, personally, I'm in favor of it. I will tell you that
you
there's
are?
Colleagues of mine that think I am, absolutely.
Okay.
There are colleagues that think this will become a circus, a public spectacle,
right?
And it's going to be used to basically diminish the seriousness of the topic. Because if you ever, there's a scene that I saw in a movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and they're having this debate with some Air Force staff and talking about the UFO reality, and all of a sudden, I guess one of the Air Force persons kind of throws this little, verbal grenade into the conversation and says, well, this is just as serious as talking about Bigfoot, right? And of course, all of a sudden you had a couple people in the audience in the movie start, in one of the scenes, they kind of say, well, I saw Bigfoot, and it completely started diminishing the seriousness of the conversation of UAP and UFOs. And so that is certainly a possibility. But I personally think that sunlight is the best antiseptic. I think if we really want to be transparent with the American people, I think we have to have public hearings eventually. I think it's owed to the American people. I think it's owed to Congress, and I think we need to have this conversation in the open. Personally, that's my personal feeling. But it would have to be done in a way that is truly transparent. It's not designed to just make a mockery and say nothing to see here, folks. Bring everybody out there. Bring the eyewitnesses that Robert Salas is mentioning, and bring out the scientists, and bring out some of the individuals that have been involved in other legacy efforts and programs as well. There's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of data, and that data, I think, once it becomes more well known, is really going to shine a light onto the reality of this phenomenon.
So, Rich, I'm sorry we skipped you, but what did you have to say about that?
Well, I just want to, number one, I'm impressed with the entire group of people we've got on this panel, and I'm glad, and I'm really thrilled with being on with them. Every one of them I have deep respect for. I was going to point out to you, going back to my Blue Book days, if you were working with Blue Book, they would have, every base would have a UFO officer, and they would go out and do UFO investigations and things like that. One of the things we found from looking at the history of Project Blue Book and all the different projects were that the investigators weren't necessarily that good, nor were they fully trained. There was a whole lot of issues with what they actually collected and how they did it. And then throwing in the fact that I was with MUFON for God knows how many years, and I was the director of investigations, or deputy director of investigations, and I had to look at reports that were done by investigators. We had a lot of problems with actually having good investigations done. So my point would be, if you say that you investigated 144 cases, who did that? How did they do it? How effective were they? Were they trained? How does the public know that we're not dealing with another blue book, if you would, that's going to whitewash it, that's going to not really give us a lot. They did give us, at least in Blue Book, a little bit of a monthly kind of like basis in terms of the number of sightings. And they did a few things, and they kept the public informed that way. But I guess I'm just like not sure that I know how the cases. I know that I've looked at cases with multiple investigators, and they all had different ideas about what they were, or one could identify it, the other one couldn't. So I guess I'm trying to figure that out, and then we as a scientific organization would love to be able to get data and put in front of the scientific community and universities. We got university professors and everything else. So why can't we include or encourage the use of universities and academia? And that, by the way, was also brought up even during Project Blue Book. And they many of them used Battelle and various others to do that. So that's my thoughts.
Rich, can I jump in for just a quick second? I want to piggyback
please.
on that for just a quick second. Rich brings up a great point. When I was a young special agent with not a whole lot of seniority, I was assigned what they call the duty agent. It was an additional duty. Basically, all the stuff and the crap that the senior guys were too senior to do became my job, and it became a quote unquote additional duty or other duties as assigned. That's precisely what I've seen as well with the reporting of UAP. Rather than being a primary responsibility of someone, a point of contact within an investigative apparatus, it just winds up being a quote unquote additional duty. Yeah, if a report comes in, give it to Snuffy, and Private Snuffy will go there and check it out, right? Meanwhile, Private Snuffy really doesn't have the necessary training and experience and expertise to conduct any type of preliminary inquiry or full field investigation, as we like to call them. So, Rich is absolutely right that we need to have a standardization, if you will, of expertise where we can have people going out and frankly asking the right questions and collecting the right data and evidence.
Well, this idea of collecting data and evidence intrigues me, because I think, honestly, for me, we're here, we want congressional hearings, but I think for me, just a little bit more honesty, a little bit more transparency, not a lot, just on stuff that's already public. We've got the gimbal, we've got the go fast, we've got the Nimitz footage. Give us another angle. Give us the longer version of the video. These things are already public. What's holding them back on this? And how do we, my question is, Lou, because I know this is important to you. How do we, and I know Ross, I saw your hand go up, so we'll go to Ross first and then Lou, and then I'm sorry, Robert. Sorry, Robert, I see you. How do we kill these false flag narratives? How do we get this idea that psyops and false flags and all of this stuff out of the mainstream with what we're asking for from these lawmakers? Ross, I'll go to you, and then we'll go to Robert, and then we'll go to Lou.
There's a couple of points I want to make. The first is I'm talking to people, as I'm sure Lou is, I'm talking to people who purport to be part of scientific investigations into things that I think the Congress ought to know about. But these are people, these are patriots, people who care passionately about your country and the state of the planet, and they think what they know should be public information. And I've said to them, will you go public with me? And they've gone, no. They're too scared. They've got a security oath that they have to heed. And they're at a stage at the moment where they're waiting to see whether there's going to be, one, the hearings in Congress, but two, whether there's going to be the impetus in those hearings in Congress where they can feel safe about giving the evidence they know. And this is the thing that really gets me, is that we talk a lot about whether we can persuade our political representatives to agree to transparent hearings and to higher degrees of openness. But one of the things that and to my shame, I've only just recently realized this, is the extent to which there are good people out there in the black world, frankly, who are sitting on information that they've had in their minds for many, many years. They want to talk about it, but they are bound by the most incredible security oaths. And frankly, also they're frightened. They've got families, they've got livelihoods. They don't want to compromise that. So one of the things I think that is equally as fundamental as persuading our Congress is getting impetus in the mainstream media. I'm incredulous as a mainstream media journalist myself, as somebody who, I've got some reasonable whack in journalism in my part of the world. And I'm incredulous that the mainstream media is asleep at the wheel on this issue. When you've got the admissions that have been made as a result of the great work that has been done by people like Lue, like everybody here, I'm amazed that, frankly, the mainstream media hasn't engaged and jumped on this issue more aggressively, because it needs to. And that's what you need to get the impetus for proper congressional hearings that will have the clout and the power to push for what really is going on.
And Robert, your thoughts? I think you're waving your arms. I'm sorry, sir. We're trying here. What do you got?
Well, first of all, I'd like to do a poll here. How many of you have read my book, Faded Giant?
Ooh, I have not.
Okay, well, at least Lou and Ross have.
And Rich has as well.
I'm holding up the book
Rich is
right
holding
now.
it right there.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Yeah, right. Well, if you look in the if you look in the appendix of that book, you'll see a lot of documents which were retrieved under Freedom of Information Act. That is evidence. That's the kind of evidence I would present to the Congress. Not only that, but I've got witness statements. I think I've counted about 10 people that will support my story. Not only my story, but the Echo Flight story. And that's when I talk about bringing openness or having open hearings, I'm talking about bringing witnesses that can back up their stories with documents, with testimonies, etc. If you start bringing those witnesses in, this is part answer to Ross's point. If you start bringing those witnesses in, then other witnesses will come forward, because it'll draw you a map as to where things have been going. So that's part of the answer to Ross, that and I agree with him completely about witnesses being frightened of coming forward. During the Roswell incident, witnesses were intimidated so much that they were threatened with their lives, not only their lives, but the lives of their children, their grandchildren, etc. This is serious stuff to this, what I call the international UFO cabal. And that's why it's going to be a very hard and long road to try to get that cabal to release the real data that they have. I wouldn't be speaking to you today if it hadn't been for I just happened to pick up a book in a bookstore, and as a result of that, went through the FOIA process and gotten documents supporting the Echo Flight shutdown, and then I went public with it being a UFO event. The Air Force, the government has not come after me, even though I'm in technical violation of my own NDA, because that incident was about Echo Flight, the documents that I got. I have received no documents about the Oscar flight, which I was involved in, and so I'm in technical violation. But I kept talking about this for over 25 years now. The Air Force has not come after me because they know I've got the witnesses, I've got the documents, etc., to support what I am saying. I guess, all right, I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Lou, what are your thoughts to that?
Two quick things. I get calls every day from people on the inside. They want to talk to me. They want to share their story. When I ask them, are they ready to go public? They say no. They said, no, not yet, Lou. I saw what happened to you. Let me test the waters a little longer. These are people who have placement and access, high-level security clearances, and they've been privy to some pretty incredible things. And I get these calls every day from very, very senior people. Now, why? What does it take for us to have complete transparency? Well, let me give you just a quick difference between a journalist and an investigative journalist like Ross. Okay, a journalist reports information. An investigative journalist digs and digs and digs and digs and then reports. Right. That type of pressure, that type of an investigative journalist like Ross or some of these other great folks out there, George Knapp, et cetera, that have spent a lot of time digging and getting real information, is the government's absolute worst nightmare. Those are the type of people that they constantly worry about, because they're the loose cannon. They're the real unknown in the equation, and you can't do anything about them. You can't stop them. And if you try to intimidate them like you can with other individuals who have security clearances, chances are they're going to out you very publicly. So I think part of the key to this is really supporting the mainstream media journalists out there. And let me just for a real quick second. So we've got, everybody knows Ross, an incredible journalist, Jamal, Rod from Stars and Stripes, George Knapp, Leslie Keene, Ralph Blumenthal, Brian Bender. These are folks who took a huge chance professionally to have this conversation with not just the American people, but the world. They put their credibility on the line. They put their profession on the line, very much like a lot of us doing here, having this conversation right now, to speak the truth. And that goes a long way. That really getting that information out so people in Congress and whatnot can make a good decision and say, you know what, I want to champion this. There's enough smoke here that we think there's fire, is extremely helpful. That's precisely what needs to happen. And Robert Salas is absolutely correct. There is a plethora of data out there, official U.S. government documentation, by the way, written in some cases by 4-star generals, 4-star, that validate the reality of this phenomenon. And people, when you tell them, they go, "What? No way, really? I never heard about that." Well, you're right. It's been out there all along, and no one knows. I think that's starting to change. I think these brave journalists are getting wise to the fact that there is a lot of data that's already available, and most of the puzzle pieces are already out there. Sure, there's a lot more, but there's a sizable amount already out there for the pickings. And I think we're about to enter hopefully a new renaissance of disclosure, where our journalists now can take information that's already been put out there very quietly under the radar, if you will, floating the balloon, and start to report on it. I think that people will be very surprised just how much information is already out there in the public sphere.
Rather, looks like you got something to say. What do you got, buddy?
When you talk about pieces to the puzzle, a lot of the people are really tie into what you say. When you talk about you've seen videos, the 23-minute video and stuff. And I guess my question is, it seems to me that there should be a way to take away the means and methods that are the reason, presumably, why these things are classified, and get some sort of declassified version of those videos and those evidence out there. And this kind of comes from John Music. He did a super chat yesterday. I'm curious what your thoughts on that are, Lou. Why can't we take away the means and methods and get some sort of more evidence out there?
Simply put, rather, we can and we should. The problem is, once that gets released, then you put the government in a very difficult situation where it has to start answering questions. Just look what happened with the USS Omaha incident, right? One video comes out of, people still don't know what it is, and they absolutely got lit up for months with mainstream media asking what the heck is going on here, right? The government does not like to be put in a defensive position like that. Unfortunately, what it doesn't realize is the more secret it is, the more attention it's drawing. And now it's to the point where the cat's out of the bag. We have a UAP task force being that's created and using your taxpayer dollars. We have a strategy being developed right now by Office of Secretary of Defense. We've got reportings now that are going to be going every 90 days to Congress. I think we're gaining momentum, and I don't think there's any going back. And I think the more that the government continues to try to withhold information that can be and should be released to the American people, the more it's putting itself in a position of jeopardy. It stands to lose its credibility. It stands to lose its authority. The only reason why governments are legitimate is because its citizens recognize its authority as being valid. Once an organization or institution or government loses that credibility, it puts itself in a very precarious situation. And I think that's partly what the government is trying to avoid, saying, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we've been lying to you for the last 70 years. That's not a great conversation to have with the American people. It's just not a good place to be if you're a bureaucrat in the government, right?
Yeah, no, that's a very insightful answer, and I appreciate that. Kind of a follow-up on this. Sally Vandy Vord was asking, can you ask Lou if he knows of any footage out there that's on the internet considered fake, but maybe really real? Speaking of pieces of the puzzle being out there.
Yes, and this is one of the efforts we're working right now behind the scenes. I don't want to lift up my hemline too much right now. We're trying to do this the right way, but come up with algorithms that can very quickly identify deep fake videos. Imagine the ability to come through hundreds of thousands of videos and very quickly determine what's real and what's not. There's a lot of utility in that, right? Takes, of course, time, money, and energy and talent to be able to do that. But those are one of the areas that we are embarking on that could hopefully shed some light on this.
I have a quick question in regard to the government lying about this for 70 years. Isn't it possible? I mean, we look at Biden and he's taking credit for ending the Afghan war, right? Isn't there incredible political power for the executive branch, or political points for the executive branch to own this and say, you know what? And it's not hard to blame the last guy. I guess my confusion in why that would be difficult is that it seems like there is political value in owning this and blaming.
Well, no, guys, let's if I can here, I think you're right. Superficially, that makes sense, but let's go down. Let's just go down the rabbit hole, shall we, for just a brief moment? Okay, here's two scenarios. You know what? Someone 25 years ago in the Air Force reported a UFO incident. They were told not to talk about it. They were given a psychological evaluation. In fact, their security clearance was suspended. As a result, they were discharged from the Air Force, got a divorce, and now homeless, living on the streets. All for doing the right thing, right? Lost everything, all for doing the right thing, what they were supposed to do, and yet they had to lose it all to do it. What about those people? Where's the liability there, right? Who's going to pay that price for those individuals who've had their lives ruined? What about let's say you have company A, that's an aerospace company, competing with company B, that's an aerospace company. And it turns out that company A may have had some material or information provided to it on the down low by the government. And now you've had this unfair competitive advantage, and now company A becomes a multi-billion-dollar military industrial complex provider, while company B went completely bankrupt, and 1,500 people lost their jobs and are now, trying to find another job.
So you're saying there's real liability here?
There is absolutely real liability, legal liability.
Legal liability.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Huge. Billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of liability. Yes. And it's you can't just come out and say, aha, guys, sorry, we fooled you for the last 70 years. It doesn't work that way. There are second and third order consequences that have to be considered. There's real national security issues at stake here. You know what? If technology was provided to company A, then what did they learn? And what were they able to develop? And maybe there was another company that would have been more suited to exploit it, perhaps, if they were given that opportunity, right? And of course, there's the people who are involved. What do? Give everybody clemency? Do you just go ahead and wave a magic wand, say everybody now is no longer subject to a lawsuit? Well, that doesn't work in a civil case. You can't make everybody immune to anybody can make a lawsuit about anybody, to anybody about anything. So, there's and then of course you have potentially the involvement with other governments. What if it turns out that the U.S. government was maybe working with another country, right? And that country told its people, "Hey, nothing to see here, folks." Right? Now all of a sudden that country gets dragged through the mud, and now it's got public hearings, and it's not that simple, guys. We need to understand that this is very complex. This is why I've said before, this is a process. This is not an event. This is going to take time to figure out. I think if you look back at the last 3 years, we've come very, very far. I'm very optimistic we're going to continue to go forward on this. But I think anybody who thinks it's just going to be overnight, you're being completely unrealistic. I don't. That's not the way government works.
Robert, I can see you bursting at the seams. I feel like you got something to say.
I came on here and I didn't realize this was the Lue Elizondo show.
It's not the Lue Elizondo show.
As far as I know, I'm the only witness on this show. So do you have any questions for me?
What's your response to that? What's your response to the government liability concern?
Government liability.
Well, no, I mean we're just talking about. I mean the
government is liable to the public. The government should be responding to the public outcry for information, and that's why getting open hearings is the key to this whole thing. I don't understand why we're even talking about people's liabilities. We're talking about a much more important things here.
What is at stake, Robert? What is at stake for you? What is at stake for the country?
Well, I think Danny Sheehan brought up a couple of things that were really important. If the government were to disclose, and I mean largely disclose, we might get access to a lot more technological information that the government has already uncovered from the phenomenon, which could include energy sources, new energy sources that would help us get off the petroleum thing, industry stuff that's creating greenhouse gases. But more importantly, I think, is the excessive secrecy in government. Another thing that Danny Sheehan brought up, there's way too much secrecy in so many ways in government. And if we could get the secrecy open up on the UAP, that would go a long way to getting the government to open up other secrets that they have.
Okay. Well, just real quick, Ross, did you have something to add to that? Go for it, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in here. I was very privileged once as a younger journalist to go to South Africa when, after the collapse of apartheid, the apartheid regime, they had what are called truth and reconciliation commissions, where essentially an immunity was offered to people who'd done terrible things on both sides of a horrible conflict. And what came out were quite curative and healthy moments where you had hitmen who'd worked for the South African intelligence services, basically apologizing to the families of their victims in courtrooms and acknowledging the crimes that they'd committed, knowing that they were not going to be criminally affected as a result of their admissions. And frankly, I wonder whether that's what we need here. Is there going to be a need for some kind of truth and reconciliation commission? Because I remember one of the first questions I was presumptuous enough to ask Lue when I first met him was, does he think that there have been crimes committed? And both he and Chris Mellon pointed out to me that governments lie to the people all the time. It's not actually a crime for a government to lie to the people. But I do think, and it's a very valid point, there are civil liabilities here, and there are probably contempts of the Congress that have been committed here, and misleading of executive officials such as the president, perhaps. And I just wonder whether it might not be a good idea for the idea to be mooted of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission where people from within the program can come and talk about what they know, knowing that they won't be subject to the not only the security oath, but also if they're revealing things that they've done that are criminal or improper, they know that they're going to be given immunity for it. Because frankly, I think that's the only way this story is ever going to come out.
That seems to make sense. So, Robert, real quick, what I'm going to do is, because we've got 15 minutes left in this interview, we've got a lot of questions from our audience. A lot of them are for Lue, so I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to upset you any further than we may have.
We do got one more for Rob. If
yeah,
just
please
for a second.
Go for it.
Ted is asking, did your feelings change about whether you would launch the missiles if given the order after you had your UAP encounter?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I guess the question is, after you had the encounter that you had at the nuclear facility, would you have still done the order to launch the nukes post that, or did that kind of change your perspective? And
of course, I would have launched. That was my job. I was a professional officer in the Air Force in charge of taking orders to launch missiles if ordered, and I would have done so, no question. And the men and women that are operating these missiles today would do the same, even though even though we know it would obliterate civilization as we know it. And that's just because you've got a professional military force that would do as ordered.
Yeah, that's a hell of a responsibility, and thanks for your service, Rob.
Yeah, no, we appreciate the service, and one of the reasons why we asked you to come on here is because you are a veteran, and this day is all about talking to veterans, getting the veteran perspective. We've got a link to your book and also to your crowdfunding source that you're going to be doing. So we've included all of those links below. If you guys want to support Robert in his effort to put this in front of Congress, and just like we're trying to do, and get it in the National Press Club, and bring some attention from the media to it, please do us a favor, check out his GoFundMe campaign, and yeah, I'll leave the floor to you, Robert, to sort of tell folks where they can again find this stuff, and any closing thoughts from you.
Well, okay. I've got a website called spiralgalaxy.org. You can go there and look at some of the evidence I have supporting my story. I mentioned that in the annex of my book, Faded Giant, I've got quite a few documents there.
Mm-hmm.
I've also, on my YouTube channel, I have published a video. It's about a 39-minute video that goes into great detail on my incident, the Echo Flight incident, and the cover-up, which you haven't talked about much, had to do with the Condon investigation and how they covered up the missile incursion incidents, Echo and Oscar. I go in great detail. It's how that was accomplished. Like I said, I've got quite a bit of backup to my story and the Echo story. There's still live witnesses such as Colonel Walt Fiegel, who is still alive and well. I spoke to him a couple of months ago. Although he's not going to be coming to our press conference, he has allowed me to broadcast his audio statements about the Echo Flight incidents. He has spoken to me and Hastings about it. So there's a lot out there that we can use to support our stories. Again, I will be accompanied by 3 others, 2 in person and 1 by Zoom. And I will announce who those are at a later date, but they've got some very interesting stories to tell, and they will tell the press that are present. If any of you can help me get that press into the room, I would appreciate it. And if any of you can help me get interviews with sitting congressmen and senators, especially those on the intel committees, I would appreciate that too. You can contact me through many sources, my website. At any rate.
Yeah, well, hey, Robert, we're going to have to bring you back for a panel with just Robert Salas and the entire mission that we have ahead of us. I think it's worth it. We clearly need to make room to just ask you questions, but I'm glad you joined the panel. I'm glad we got your perspective. Again, if you guys want to help Robert in his efforts, all of the links are included in the chat, sir. We can't thank you enough for being here. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you all.
And I just wanted to say quickly that I haven't read your book yet, Robert, but I just bought it and I'm looking forward to reading it. And I hope you will come back and join us again so we can just do a deep dive into your story. Will you do that for us?
Well, ask me and we'll see.
Excellent.
I just asked you.
Maybe let's ask him on another day.
All right, we'll ask you on a different day, Robert.
All right.
Yeah, ask me after I've settled down a little bit.
There you go.
You got it.
All right, sir. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Wow.
Look, this is the issue, right? We've got these veterans that are pissed. They're pissed, man.
Yeah.
They don't want to, they have zero patience. Their patience is done. And this is the reoccurring theme for both of the phone homes we've done. If we bring on veterans and they're like, no. I don't have time for these nuanced little tiptoey things. I was in a nuclear facility. I had my hand on the button and I don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about what's really important. I'm like, I get it, but I mean, what could we do? We're sort of the lapdogs here, and we're just looking for scraps that are falling off the table and then dissecting those scraps as best we can. But I understand the frustration. I totally get it. But yeah, it's also a panel. We're here to talk to each other and bring some different ideas. What do you got, Rich?
No, I was just going to say that, talking to witnesses firsthand, like, that I've done for, decades, and doing face-to-face interviews with witnesses right after they've had the event, these are life-shattering and changing, altering experiences for many of these people. I mean, this is with them for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And so, this, and I just want to point out, that it was said earlier, like, that there are significant impacts to a lot of the witnesses to where they don't want to come forward. In the 60s, we had a whole bunch of police officers that were splattered all over the National Enquirer about their sightings, and it completely ruined their lives.
Right.
I mean, they ended up with divorces. They ended up, losing their jobs. And why? Because guess what? The Enquirer made it around the world, and every journalist was writing about it. And suddenly they became, like number one, And so there are implications to having a sighting and talking about it that a lot of people won't go to that next step and talk about it. I talked with one couple that kept it quiet for 48 years that they saw something. Right. They didn't even tell their kids. And it wasn't until I went on a TV show that they said, well, I think we might be able to talk to him, and that's the problem.
Yeah. What's going on? Somebody, what's anyway.
I have got somebody that's pounding up.
That's you, Rich. Okay. All right. No worries.
Me, but it's not me doing it. Right?
Because I knew Lou also had some home construction going on a few weeks back. So I was thinking maybe it was Lou. Okay.
No,
so
I'm mute, fellas. I'm on mute.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Okay. So okay,
got questions
guys,
for Lou, yeah.
We've got 7 minutes left. We might extend it by 5 or so, depending on what's going on here. But we're going to try and fire through these questions as quick as we can because we had a lot of people donating the super chat because they want to ask you questions. So let's go for it. Rather, what do you got?
Well, yeah, the first one here, Jason Smith asked us twice. Let's pull Lou on so we can get your reaction.
Yep.
The same conclusion on this topic is that the government knows the truth, and the truth is terrifying. To go a long way to explain 70 years of silence. Do you agree with that? Do you think the truth might be terrifying?
I do, but I think that the truth is that we know a lot less than we hope to. I think the big secret is that we really don't know a lot, and that's puts the government in a really bad spot to be in because we put faith and confidence in our governments to always have answers for us. And then this is one of the cases where I don't think they have a lot of the answers that we're expecting, and that's to admit that and admit that to the world is I think challenging.
Well, yeah. Speaking of getting to the truth, Excalibur donated $100 for this question. Thank you. He asked, Rich Hoffman helps head one of the largest professional civilian UAP research organizations in the world. Why doesn't Lou here and now tell Rich and the SCU areas to look and what sensors to use in order to find UAP? We could have
good question. That's kind of goes with my question too, because you sort of talked about a device that you could deploy that could get it. Maybe we could get this device.
I guess
I'm all ears, Lou. I'm all ears.
How do you know we're not talking to Rich? I don't want to speak for Rich. I'll let Rich answer his part. But I think the utility of the SCU is invaluable. We have several efforts underway right now that we are specifically looking at bringing elements of the SCU in. I'm not going to speak for the SCU. We have some interlocutors that are very much part of SCU and part of our effort. But with that, all due respect, I'm going to let Rich answer the rest of that.
Please, Rich. I'm so happy that we have Rich here because sometimes he does it. I'll let you ask how or Rich, and now we got Rich here. Rich, what's the answer?
I wish I knew, but I mean no. Let me clarify that there's a lot of exciting things that are going on. We're actually being approached by a lot of different companies that want to actually connect with us. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at that, and I want to go back to a point that Lou made earlier, and that was the question about company A and company B. And if we go and we work with a partner or a company with company A. And how does that work with company B who might be doing something with this whole UFO thing that we really want to be able to engage in? and would they share their IP with us? I mean, it's a conflict that we have to deal with in the context of intellectual property, and how do you address that? And so that's a fundamental shift that we're going to have to try to address. I'm kind of curious. I mean, for me, it's like, when we talk about this nuclear equation, I'm looking, and we're actually looking at the idea of being able to deploy some sort of cameras around nuclear sites. I mean, literally. I mean, if you're wanting to be able to get some sort of like an idea or an understanding about these objects, why wouldn't you position your all of your sensors and everything else around some of these nuclear locations to see if you can collect data? And so we're trying to be able to think about that in a very broad way to say, let's approach it. And even if the government chooses not to engage us, or maybe we can't engage, or they don't want to share, or they don't want to have a CRADA or something like that, we'll figure it out. And I think people like Lue and some of the other people that I know that even know Lue knows. We're all trying to figure out what's the way that we can work together to be able to help really scientifically approach the study of the UAP and to investigate it properly. And that goes to my earlier point. How are those investigations being done, and to what extent, how much of the, for me, it's a situation where when I've done investigations myself, it's like looking extremely broadly. I mentioned it yesterday. It's not just a person standing in front of you telling you that they saw something, but what about, did you check with the police department? Did you check with the air traffic control? Did you check all these other elements that are potential information sources about that object that was seen? And do we do it broadly enough that we're actually, getting the full picture? So I just want to bring that up.
No, that's a good question. It's a good point. And I mean, again, this nuclear connection is obviously clear, but I've also got another question here for Lue, and this was actually from the other day from Christian Carius. We never got to ask it. What do you know about NATO Special Forces UFO recovery squads using Bob Fish's signal to bait and trap UFOs to EMP them right out of the sky? And I know I see Ross's head just going, yeah, But Lue, what's your thoughts on that initially?
So I'm not going to speak on behalf of NATO.
Okay.
NATO is an international organization, obviously, or otherwise known as OTAN. And I'm not at liberty to discuss anything that NATO may or may not be involved with. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to take a polite pass on that.
Okay. Well, can I ask a second question that he had?
Sure.
What do you know about the false INW or deceptive indications and warning projects?
I can't go. Nope.
No worries. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I figured I'd put him in there. Ross, maybe you've got something to elaborate on, because I saw your head when you mentioned Bob Fish. I know it's a chapter in your book, In Plain Sight, by the way. Links down below. Go check it out. Buy his book. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bob, just to explain to people who haven't seen Bob's comments, Bob basically was a former top secret SCI cleared official who worked at a very, very high level, not only in various aerospace companies. He actually installed the communications for the White House. But one of the things that he saw when he was at an aerospace facility in California, probably Lockheed Martin, was a series of things that shocked him, telemetry data that showed that DSP, Defense Support Program satellites, were monitoring objects in orbit that were clearly maneuvering intelligently, that weren't known space objects. But one of the other things he told me was that he was briefed by a guy who was operating a surveillance aircraft off Florida with the purpose of monitoring and intercepting communications in Cuba. He told me that there were frequent sightings of objects coming in and out of the ocean at a particular location off Florida in the ocean. And one of the things that was happening was they were using a particular frequency to actually detect and monitor, and indeed to actually anticipate these objects. And I've since, in the period since I've published that information, I've had other people come forward to me who've told me that this is indeed a reality, that for the last 30 years plus, the United States has been able to anticipate UAPs in some way by monitoring particular electromagnetic frequencies, and they can actually sometimes predict when objects are going to appear, and indeed in some cases track them.
Lou, is it safe to say you agree with everything he just said? Great, awesome. All right, thank you guys, everybody, for being here. No, I'm kidding. I would never do that to you. Okay, what's the next question, rather?
A good one from Drew Williamson says that Obama has said that they've seen reports on strange moving objects, but he says he can't discuss it further. So who is it that's telling everyone, including presidents, that they cannot discuss or release info on the subject of UAP?
Was that a direction directed at Lou or anyone on the panel?
At Lou and Ross. So
okay, great. We'll start with Lou.
Well, I'll tell you, Rich knows the reason why too. The bottom line is that national security information is governed by law, and that law is enacted is passed by Congress, the legislative branch, not the executive branch. Even though the president is the final original classification authority, OCA, his job is to enforce the laws, not to make the laws. And it's Congress's job to make the laws. And so when Congress makes a law and someone decides this is classified, it's classified. And that's what it is. And, a president is not excluded from that. Presidents can get in trouble too, just like you and me, for having a discussion that's inappropriate, that violates, national security. Am I?
No, you're spot on. I mean, I'm signed up for life. I mean, I've with working with the Army. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, and that's our world that we live in, and you do protect that. And so hats off to the president for not wanting to take it and break a law.
Ross, quick thoughts, and then if you could pull up Aaron Desario's question after this, that'd be great. All right, you guys. So that's all the time we got today. I thought we were going to finish this episode. It's almost over. This discussion, we go for I think another maybe question or two. So if you want to see the last couple of questions, go check it out. The link is in the description below with the timestamp. So please go enjoy the rest of the show. I've got to get out of here because I'm about to go make a cameo over at Calling All Beings holiday party, which should be interesting at the very least, and definitely some fun. So I'll be over there in about 15-20 minutes, right after I upload this to the podcast. Before we get out of here, of course, I want to start the music. That would be good, right? There we go. Well, maybe there we go. Let's see. Hold on. This computer always seems to freeze right at the end of these streams. Let's do this. Maybe that'll. All right, there we go. Yeah, I don't know. Something about every time I try to put on some tunes, when there's another screen playing in the background, it just loses its mind, you guys. So appreciate you hanging in there. Of course, before we get out of here, I always have got to pay the bills. I want to say thank you to everybody in the super chats. Thank you so damn much for donating to the show. It's an absolute pleasure and honor, honestly. Every time you guys throw hard-earned dollars toward the show, it really just, it's humbling, and I'm so grateful for it, honestly, that you guys do that, because you really like the show, and that means a lot to me, so I appreciate it. Of course, I want to also do a couple of other things, and that is remind you that this show, if you're on the road, you're at work, is available on podcasts, anywhere you find your podcasts. iTunes, Spotify, two great places to go, but we're available on all sorts of podcasts. So look for us, rate, review, share the podcast. The podcast is growing by leaps and bounds. That's all because of you guys sharing it and commenting and telling everybody how awesome this podcast is. So appreciate it. Or this show as a podcast, which is we just upload the live show to the podcast. And if you're listening to podcasts and you've never seen the show, check us out on YouTube. It's a lot of fun. We've also got Discord. The links for all of this stuff is in the description below. So please check out all of my links in the link tree, and it'll lead you in the right directions for everything the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Of course, I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes that you hear on the show. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. Want to say thank you to the moderators in the chat, Aaron Desario, and everybody else who was in there. I can't remember who else was in there, but thank you. Also, let's see here. Check out our Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can support this show. We are a public access channel. We're supported by viewers like you. And so Patreon Super Chats are a great way to help and donate to the show. There are no paywalls here at the Unidentified Celebrity Review. And that's because we have such great Patreon members and supporters through the Super Chats. I try to keep everything on this show as available to everyone, no matter how much they put into the program. And if you can't put it in the program, don't worry about it. A like, a subscribe, a share goes an immensely long way. We have at least 2,500 new members in the last month, which is crazy that we had that many subscribers join the UCR family, but welcome to all you guys out there. We're going to be going back to live shows starting the new year. I don't even know what day January 1st is, but whatever day that is, I think it's Sunday. We won't be doing a show that day, but we'll be doing a show the 2nd, which is Tuesday, Monday. And we'll be doing a show Tuesday, but come on back. We're going to be having some really cool shows. We got some interviews that we're lining up that are going to be really, really fun. One including David Marler later next month. So that should be a good interview. So ring the bell. That way, anytime we go live, you are notified 15 minutes before we do so. And that's it, you guys. Just check out the links below. UCR merch store, all sorts of fun stuff. And I also wanted to leave you on just my thoughts of this interview real quick. That was awesome. Like I almost put it at number 1. But I don't want, the only reason why it would be number 1 is because of just what happened with Robert Salas and how he sort of was impatient with the conversation. And look, I sympathize. I've talked to Robert after this. He's agreed to come back. He was busy in November. I didn't want to ask him in December. I figured, let's wait till the new year. We'll bring him back. We'll talk to him. We'll go deep into his book, which I've bought and I'm going to read. Michael's already read it. So, you know, we're very interested in what Robert Salas has to say. We think he's an important piece of the puzzle. But he's not the only piece. You know, there are a lot of other pieces. There's newer, shinier pieces. And I know that's not a fun way to look at this topic, but I mean, that's just what current lawmakers are really going to pay attention to, especially if it's quick, concise, to the point. So we'll see what happens. But we do love Robert, and I feel the frustration that oozes off of him. I definitely sympathize with it. The one regret I have from the interview is that he said he was the only experiencer on the panel, and that's not true. I'm also an experiencer, so I understand from that frustration of being an experiencer, wanting to. This conversation that we're having doesn't even compute for you because you've seen it, you've experienced it, especially for him having his finger on a nuclear weapon and all of a sudden that power being taken from him, not just one missile, but, you know, the entire silo of missiles. So, I can understand that frustration, but yeah, that's my only sort of regret to that. And also I wanted to remind you guys real quick, the bigphonehome.com website is still up. If you want to contact your lawmakers and ask them how you can help or ask them questions about this new UAP office that has now been signed into law, we're going to be forming questions and targets, I guess, as to what we're going to be soliciting the government for as far as information is concerned. But we still got a lot of information to wait to come down the road before we start formulating a plan of attack as far as what the next Big Phone Home 3 is going to be all about. It might not even be a government effort. We might just solely concentrate on helping the independent research teams out there, like a UAPX, like a Galileo, and trying to get billionaires like an Elon Musk or a Brandon Fugel or any one of these people who have the checkbook to write these types of checks to get somebody like an Avi Loeb closer to, $100 million budget, which is what he's looking for. So with all that out of the way, thank you guys. Appreciate you. Love you. Stay safe. Peace. I'm going to tell you all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.